People don't like mirrors. Not the real ones. Not the ones that show you the truth without flattery, without filters, without those soft edges that make you feel better about who you've become. Most people crave reflection only when it flatters them. But the moment it reveals something raw, something unedited, something inconvenient, they break. And nowhere does this happen faster than when modern women are treated exactly the way they treat men. That's the part nobody wants to admit. We've built a culture where a woman can tell you she wants a six-figure man, 6 foot tall, emotionally intelligent but stoic, dominant but gentle, powerful but safe. She can list demands like she's ordering a custom human being from a catalog. And society applauds. Know your worth, they tell her. Raise your standards, they repeat. But when a man dares to have even one preference, one boundary, suddenly he's oppressive, shallow, misogynistic. Suddenly the equality everybody preached becomes a threat, because equality only works when it benefits them. And that's the forbidden truth. Modern women don't want equality. They want special treatment disguised as empowerment. They want the privileges of tradition with the freedoms of modernity. They want a man's authority without a man's accountability. They want choice without consequence. That's why they panic when men finally mirror their behavior. When men stop pedestalizing. When men stop apologizing for having standards. When men stop treating women like delicate exceptions and start treating them like individuals with agency and responsibility. The shock isn't accidental. It's structural. It's psychological. Imagine this. A woman looks you in the eye and tells you she won't date a man under 6 feet. Not because she's tall. Not because she's athletic. Just because she can. Her preference is socially acceptable, even encouraged. But the moment you say you prefer someone under a certain weight, someone with a certain level of discipline, someone with a past that doesn't include half the city, suddenly you're cruel. You're insecure. You're hateful. Equality evaporates the moment it no longer flatters them. And here's the part that stings the most. They're shocked not because it's unfair, but because it's unfamiliar. They've never lived in a world where men's standards mattered. They've never experienced being measured. They've never been told, you don't qualify. Not seriously. Not collectively. Not culturally. For decades, society told women, you are naturally valuable. You are the prize. You deserve the best. Meanwhile, men were told, earn your worth. Build yourself. Be useful. Two different realities, two different psychological ecosystems, and now both colliding. Let me give you something real. Something human. I once watched a woman rate herself a 9, without hesitation. No humility. No awareness. Just pure confidence, floating on nothing but Instagram likes and thirsty DMs. Then in the next breath, she rated the average man a 4. A 4. Not because she had evidence. Not because she understood men. Simply because her validation-drenched world told her that average women are goddesses and average men are disposable. She lived in a universe where her desires were sacred, but his were offensive. Another woman told me she wanted a CO. 6 figures. Athletic. Charming. A leader. A man at the top of the dominance hierarchy. So I asked her, gently, calmly, what she brought in return. What qualities she built. What value she offered that would match the very man she demanded. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was defensive. Aggressive. Entitled. As if the mere question was an act of violence against her self-esteem. Because that's what equality feels like when you've been conditioned to believe your value is automatic. Then there's the social media phenomenon, one of the greatest psychological distortions of the modern age. A woman posts a selfie. Not exceptional. Not breathtaking. Just a normal woman with a filter and decent lighting. And suddenly, hundreds of likes. Dozens of comments. Men offering attention cheap and abundant, like fast food. That infinite stream of male validation becomes her mirror. But it's a funhouse mirror, distorting, inflating, lying. It tells her she's rare. It tells her she's a queen. It tells her the world is full of men ready to offer everything for nothing. But here's the truth men learn early and women learn late. A man will sleep with a woman he would never commit to. He will validate what he would never value. He will praise what he would never choose. Yet she misreads lust as admiration, attention as interest, flattery as respect. The result? Average women walking through the world with elite expectations, and a complete inability to understand why they keep getting rejected by the very men they believe they deserve. And when those men finally speak, when those men finally say, "You don't meet my standards," the earth shakes beneath them. They call it misogyny. They call it hate. They call it insecurity, fragility, toxicity. Anything except the truth. They're facing the same evaluation men have faced forever. And they can't handle it. I remember a client who dated a woman who openly bragged about cheating in every past relationship. She said it casually, as if discussing the weather. "I keep options," she told him, "just in case." She smiled like it was clever, like it made her empowered. He believed he would be the exception. 6 months later, she cheated. When confronted, she didn't apologize. She didn't reflect. She didn't take responsibility. No, she blamed him. "You didn't meet my emotional needs," she said, turning betrayal into victimhood, turning destruction into justification. That's the psychology men are dealing with. The accountability vacuum. The entitlement. The belief that men exist to absorb the consequences of their choices. And the moment men treat them like men, direct, honest, unfiltered, the meltdown begins. Because equality isn't kind. Equality isn't flattering. Equality isn't soft. Equality is a mirror. And mirrors don't negotiate with delusion. You can always tell when a person has lived their whole life cushioned by special treatment. The smallest resistance breaks them. The smallest boundary wounds them. The smallest standard feels like an attack instead of an expectation. And when you strip away the comfort, when you speak to them the way you'd speak to another adult, with clarity, with honesty, with neutrality, they crumble. Women today are shocked by equality because they've never truly faced it. Let me take you deeper into the stories, the ones people don't like admitting, the ones men whisper to each other in private because there's no safe place to say them out loud. A man sits across from me during a session, hands shaking, voice trembling. He tells me his girlfriend demands expensive dates, vacations, gifts, the whole performance of romance. Not because she contributes something meaningful, but because she believes existing is enough. One afternoon, she hands him a list, requirements for being her partner. Must earn $100,000. Must be 6 feet 2 inches. Must have a luxury car. Must travel. Must dress well. Must be emotionally available but not clingy. Must plan dates but never ask her to plan anything. Must pay for everything. Must accept her friendships with men she once flirted with. And the man, God bless him, asked her one simple question. "What are your requirements for yourself?" Her face hardened. The conversation ended. Because answering that question would have exposed the imbalance she depends on. Because in her mind, his role is to bring value, and her role is to receive it. But this isn't rare. This isn't shocking. This is normal now. Women carry expectations built on fantasy, inflated by validation, protected by double standards. And when reality challenges those fantasies, they experience it as cruelty. Another client showed me a dating profile he encountered. A woman in her 30s, unemployed, living with her parents, openly struggling with her weight, but describing herself as a high-value woman looking for a man who can handle her. Her bio listed her demands. He must own a home, must be financially stable, must be emotionally mature, must be romantic, must travel, must be ambitious. Her contribution? Loyal, fun, and sassy. That's not value. That's marketing. And yet, she genuinely believed she deserved the top 1% of men. That's the core of the crisis. Women have overestimated their value while underestimating men's standards. Social media has turned average women into self-appointed royalty. Dating apps have tricked them into thinking abundance equals desirability. Thirsty men have reinforced the delusion by offering attention that costs them nothing but leaves women thinking it means everything. A woman once told me proudly, "Men chase me all the time." I asked her, "How many commit?" Silence. That's the illusion. Men pursue sex. Men commit to value. There's a difference modern women can't see. Then there's hookup culture, the slow erosion of intimacy disguised as liberation. Women sleep with multiple men, thinking they can detach like men do. They move from body to body, thinking they can reset themselves emotionally every time. But every time they give themselves away, something gets chipped. Not physically, psychologically. Bonding becomes harder. Trust becomes weaker. Love becomes work instead of instinct. And when they reach for commitment, they can't hold it. Not because men are unworthy, but because they've stretched their emotional fabric so thin it tears under the weight of something real. Studies show it. History shows it. Biology shows it. But pointing it out is misogyny. The modern woman wants to live like a man sexually while still being treated like a princess romantically. But biology doesn't negotiate with ideology. You don't get to break the mechanisms of your own attachment system and then demand that men pretend it never happened. I knew a woman who slept with over 50 men before turning 30. She had fun. She lived freely. She treated commitment like an insult. But when she finally wanted a relationship, she demanded a man who saw her as special, unique, untouched by her past. How can he see you as rare, I asked her gently, when you've spent years treating yourself as common? She cried. Not because I was wrong, but because for the first time, someone told her the truth without bending the edges to protect her feelings. Then we have the brutal double standards that society defends like sacred commandments. A woman gains 50 pounds after marriage. Love me for who I am. A man gains 20. He let himself go. I'm not attracted anymore. A woman cheats. She wasn't being emotionally fulfilled. A man cheats. Narcissistic pig. A woman hits a man. He must have provoked her. A man pushes her away while defending himself. Abuser. This isn't equality. It's gendered immunity. One woman told me straight to my face, all men are trash. I looked at her calmly and said, most violent crime, most prison population, and most suicides are men. If we're trash, society treats us like disposable trash. She blinked. Then she accused me of being hostile. Hostile? For using stats. Modern women have learned to attack freely but collapse when confronted. They can call men toxic, dangerous, useless. But the moment a man questions their behavior, accountability becomes oppression. I once worked with a man whose wife controlled every aspect of his life. Who he spent time with, how he spent money, what hobbies he pursued. He wanted to join a gym. She said no. It'll make you confident, she told him. Confident men cheat. So he stayed home. He lost himself. She lost attraction. The marriage died. She blamed him. He wasn't masculine enough. For the masculinity she suffocated. This is the psychological pattern of our generation. Women restrict the very traits they desire, then resent men for losing them. And when men finally say, no more, when they refuse to be controlled, when they assert boundaries, women call it cruelty, not correction. Because equality only feels fair when they're holding the whip. And here's the emotional escalation, the part that cuts deep. Modern women aren't shocked because men are harsh. They aren't shocked because men are unfair. They aren't shocked because men are cruel. They're shocked because men finally stopped performing, stopped pretending, stopped absorbing every insult, every double standard, every expectation with silent compliance. They're shocked because for the first time in their lives, men are treating them the way they treat men. And they can't handle it. There's a moment, an unmistakable moment, when a man finally stops bending. You can see it in his eyes. The quiet solidifies. The spine straightens. The tone shifts from apologetic to absolute. And suddenly, the same women who spent years demanding equality begin to feel something they were never prepared for. True equality. The kind men live under every day. And that's where the emotional tension explodes. Because for men, accountability is oxygen. For women, accountability is suffocation. Watch what happens when men start using the same words women use. She says, I deserve the best. He says, so do I. She calls him arrogant. She says, these are my standards. He says, these are mine. She calls him controlling. She says, if he can't provide, I won't date him. He says, if she can't stay loyal, I won't commit. She calls him insecure. She says, men need to step up. He says, women need to mature. She calls him misogynistic. What she really means is, I want you to change, but I refuse to. I've seen this pattern so many times it feels like a psychological script, one that repeats across cities, countries, cultures, different faces but the same emotional architecture. Let me take you into a story that still lingers in my mind. A man came to me after a 6-year relationship. He had done everything right, provided stability, loyalty, patience. But his girlfriend, like so many modern women, believed relationships were auditions where she played the judge and he played the contestant. She criticized everything: his job, his hobbies, his male friends, his tone, his interests, his ambitions. But when he gently asked her to manage her spending habits, she exploded. When men ask women to change, she said, it's abuse. Yet her demands weren't abuse. They were communication. This is the psychological environment men live in. Women can correct, men can comply. Women can judge, men can endure. Women can set standards, men can accept them. But the moment he stopped, the moment he said, no, you don't get to talk to me like that, something inside her snapped. She told him he changed. She told him he became cold. She told him he wasn't the man she fell in love with. But that's the lie. He didn't change. He stopped tolerating her refusal to change. There's a difference. And here's the deeper truth. Modern women aren't afraid of losing men, they're afraid of losing control over men. That's why they panic when equality appears. Another man told me that when he finally asked his girlfriend to take accountability for the breakup of her past relationships, she froze. It was as if he touched a part of her psyche she'd hidden away. Every ex she left was abusive, emotionally unavailable, toxic. 5 men. All the same story. Could all 5 truly have been monsters? Or was she the common denominator? But she couldn't even consider the possibility. Responsibility would dismantle the narrative she used to protect her ego. So she cried. She made herself the victim. She weaponized fragility, something modern women are taught to do with surgical precision. Because fragility is power, tears are a shield, and accountability becomes impossible when victimhood is a shortcut. Let's go darker. One man I worked with was physically hit, by his girlfriend during arguments. She scratched him, slapped him, threw objects, screamed, insulted his masculinity, destroyed his property. When he finally pushed her away to protect himself, she went to her family and said he was violent. He asked me, what am I supposed to do? I can't defend myself. I can't leave without being vilified. I can't speak without being labeled aggressive. I feel trapped. That's what equality looks like in the modern era. Men being held to impossible standards while women are excused from the basics. And then comes the shock. The moment men stop playing along. The moment they push back. She insults you. You call it disrespect. She says you're too sensitive. She mocks your struggles. You tell her it's hurtful. She says you're emotionally weak. She demands financial support. You ask what she contributes. She says you're transactional. She calls men trash. You point out her behavior. She says you hate women. The moment men apply symmetry, modern women break. Because deep down, they know something they cannot admit. They demand a level of grace they do not extend. They expect a level of tolerance they do not offer. They want a level of treatment they could never survive if reversed. Let me tell you about one of the most revealing moments I've ever witnessed. A woman told a man at a dinner party, loud enough for the table to hear, "Short men are pathetic. If he's under 6 feet, he's basically invisible to me." People laughed. She laughed. It was socially acceptable cruelty. So the man asked her calmly, "What's your weight?" The room fell silent. She turned red. Her breathing changed. Her eyes widened. "How dare you?" The table gasped. For what? She made a physical judgment. He made a physical judgment. equal treatment, equal standards, equal bluntness. So why the meltdown? Because she expected him to endure what she could never tolerate. That's the core revelation here, the one that terrifies modern women. Men are learning to stop absorbing the blows. Men are learning to throw back the mirror. Men are learning that silence is not strength, it's surrender. And once a man stops surrendering, the entire dynamic collapses. That's why the emotional reaction is so explosive. That's why the panic is so visceral. That's why equality feels like violence. Because it strips away the privileges they disguised as progress. It removes the pedestal they were taught to stand on. It forces them to face a truth they've spent their entire lives avoiding. Men are not utilities. Men are not punching bags. Men are not disposable. Men are human beings, with standards, with boundaries, with value. And when women finally meet men on equal ground, they realize that equal ground is nothing like the throne they imagined. There's a silence that enters a woman's life the moment her illusion finally breaks. A silence she's never heard before, because for the first time, the world stops cushioning her. The pedestal cracks. The validation slows. The men she dismissed, ignored, mocked, or used walk away without anger, without bitterness, without even the desire to convince her of anything. And that silence terrifies her. Because it is in that silence where truth finally echoes. Modern women aren't shocked because men are being cruel. They're shocked because men have stopped being sacrifices. For decades, society told women a comforting lie, that their value was eternal, that youth was a choice, that fertility could be stored in freezers like leftovers, that men would always chase them no matter how they behaved, how they aged, how they treated people, or how many lives they burned through in the process. But nature was watching. Time was watching. Men were watching. And in the quiet spaces of male suffering, those long nights where men carried burdens without complaint, where they rebuilt themselves after heartbreak in silence, where they learned to live without comfort or applause, something changed. Men woke up. Not with rage, not with vengeance, but with clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't argue, doesn't beg, doesn't negotiate. The clarity that simply walks away. That's what modern women never expected. Men's indifference. They were prepared for anger. They were prepared for arguments. They were prepared for pursuit. But they were not prepared for men no longer caring. I've seen it firsthand. A woman reaches her mid-30s, confidence fading, panic rising. Suddenly the men she once ignored, the ones she mocked for having too little ambition, or not enough height, have options she no longer qualifies for. Suddenly, the world she built around her ego becomes a desert. She posts online about where all the good men went, but the truth is simpler. They kept walking. She stopped growing. The tragedy isn't that she aged. The tragedy is that she believed she wouldn't have to. And then the realization hits her with the force of a lifetime. Men's attention was never the guarantee she believed it was. Her value was not inherited, it was temporary. Her power was not structural, it was situational. She thought the rules didn't apply to her. Now the rules are the only thing she sees. I once spoke to a woman who spent her 20s living like a man. Casual sex, endless options, constant validation. She told me, with a sad, slow voice, I thought I could do everything men do without consequences. But consequences don't disappear because you ignore them. They accumulate. She told me she felt empty, numb, like every connection faded faster than the last. She wanted loyalty but no longer knew how to give it. She wanted commitment but no longer believed in it. She wanted a family but feared she had lost the capacity to bond deeply enough to sustain one. She cried, not because a man hurt her, but because time did. Then there are the women who confuse independence with isolation. They embrace careers, ambition, money, good things, real things, yet discover too late that success cannot warm you at night, cannot hold you during grief, cannot laugh with you over a quiet dinner. They traded companionship for empowerment but never learned that empowerment without connection becomes a prison. Meanwhile, men, the same men they dismissed, grew into themselves. Their value increased with competence, confidence, discipline. They became stable, centered, resourceful. And women call this unfair, as if biology should ask for permission before unfolding itself. But nature isn't political. It's not ideological. It simply is. And nature is now revealing the consequences of pretending men and women are interchangeable. Men and women were never meant to mirror each other, they were meant to complement each other. Strength meeting softness. Logic meeting emotion. Stability meeting nurture. Two halves of a whole, until ideology convinced one half that it didn't need the other. That's the root of this crisis. Women were told they didn't need men. Men believed them. And when men stop needing women back, the entire dance collapses. I've watched marriages crumble because women demanded leadership from men they spent years undermining. I've watched relationships fail because women wanted a man who was strong enough to protect them but soft enough to never challenge them. I've watched dating markets warp into grotesque theaters where average women expect elite men while offering nothing but entitlement dressed as empowerment. And every time a man withdraws, every time a man stops chasing, every time a man sets a boundary, women call it misogyny. But it's not misogyny. It's reality rebalancing itself. Modern women are shocked when men treat them like men because they were never conditioned for accountability. They were conditioned to be protected, defended, excused, celebrated. Their misbehavior was forgiven. Their mistakes were validated. Their flaws were self-expression. Their chaos was emotional honesty. But when men begin holding them to the standards men face daily, performance, accountability, discipline, loyalty, women experience it as cruelty, when in truth, it's equality. The philosophical core of all this is simple. There is no equality without equal accountability. There is no respect without reciprocal effort. There is no love without shared responsibility. Men have lived by these rules their entire lives. Women are only now discovering what those rules feel like. And yes, some women will adapt. They'll grow, they'll mature, they'll self-reflect. They'll realize that femininity is power, softness is strength, and partnership is an exchange, not a throne. Those women will thrive. Men will choose them. Families will grow from them. The future will be built by them. But many won't. They'll cling to delusion until it abandons them. They'll blame men, blame society, blame anyone except themselves. They'll age into bitterness, whispering the same question. Where have all the good men gone? The answer is painful but true. Good men are exactly where they've always been. They're just not choosing you anymore. And that's the real shock. Not that men changed, but that men finally learned their value. Because the moment men stop pedestalizing women, the balance of nature returns. And equality becomes real. Not the fantasy version, not the ideological version, but the version with teeth. The version where both sides must earn what they expect. The version where both sides must contribute what they demand. The version where accountability is not cruelty, but clarity. A truth modern women will have to accept. Men are no longer worshiping you. They are evaluating you. Just like you evaluate them. And that is what equality actually feels like.